forgive me if I talk a little bit soft. I got some people asleep in the room across from me, and so I don't want to be too loud. But given all that's been talking about the star, the Christmas star, I went through Matthew 2 tonight, and I wanted to just go over that and just talk about all of this in conjunction with now. Interestingly enough, the book of Matthew, he writes about this. This is Matthew the race trader, Matthew the tax collector. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, and I'm not in the book of Luke right now. Luke goes into more detail about the shepherds and everything involving the birth of Jesus. Wise men from the east arrived unexpectedly in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." And I did a study on this just not too long ago. And it's open, like, there's so much richness in the Bible. Just the fact that God, these wise men were astronomers, essentially. They looked at the stars and tried to tell signs that God met them on their level. God met astronomers in their own medium, and he guided them by a star. And even we Christians, I think, if we don't watch ourselves carefully, and that's hard to do because we're mentally finite. Every man is mentally finite. We can make the mistake of placing God in a box about what he can and can't do to reach people. When King Herod heard of this, he was deeply disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. And let's talk about Mr. Herod for a bit, shall we? And this was according to recorded history from that period, Roman historians. Herod was actually an Edomite, basically the tribe of people from Esau. And that is significant because way back in the book of Genesis, Isaac, the son of Abraham, the promised son of Abraham, had two sons with Rachel. Not Rachel, but Rebecca. Yeah. Rebecca, I meant to say. Esau and Jacob. And Jacob was the one that God had prophesied would. Esau was born first, but he said the older will serve the younger, which was unheard of in that time because the firstborn son usually got the inheritance. And Jacob fulfilled that by tricking Esau out of that blessing. And Esau was bent on revenge from that day forward. And even though they reconciled, Esau's people, the Edomites, were resentful of the Jews forever from that point. And they were their natural enemy. Herod was an Edomite, and he was appointed to be the ruler over Judea, where Jerusalem is, by the way, or was according to that map. And he's an Edomite ruling over the Jewish people. And this was a man who was determined to do anything to hold on to his power. Like, this was a man who assassinated his own wife, his mother-in-law, his oldest son, and 2 other sons. When Herod heard this, he was deeply disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. They might have been afraid that he was going to go on a rampage. So he assembled the chief priests and the scribes of the people and asked them where the Messiah would be born. In Bethlehem of Judea, they told him, because this is what is written by the prophet. And they quote this: "And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the leaders of Judah, because out of you will come a leader who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly summoned the wise men and asked them the exact time the star appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. When you find him, report back to me so that I too can go and worship him." After hearing the king, they went on their way. Notice that they didn't really respond to him. Silence does not always mean consent. There's your practical lesson. And this just shows what kind of person Herod was. And when the world dabbles in theology, he wasn't really interested. As evidence later, he wanted to kill him. And that speaks to the darkness of humanity. When God, adding a human element to his deity and bringing him to earth in the most non-threatening way possible, he is an infant. He was born. Even as an infant, people are afraid of him. He is king immediately. And there it was, the star they had seen in the east. It led them until it came and stopped above the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed beyond measure. Entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and falling to their knees, they worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And Jesus at this point is obviously a baby. He's not going to really do anything with these. But from that lesson that I went over before doing this, when we give to Jesus today, we don't give directly to him. We give to his people who hopefully use that gift on his behalf in a wise and responsible manner. And being warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their own country by another route. After they were gone, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, "Get up, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and escaped to Egypt. He stayed there until Herod's death, so that what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet would be fulfilled. "Out of Egypt I called my son." And that's probably where the gold comes in. You have to relocate somewhere. You need money. So that's where that gift by the wise man comes in for good use. And it just has me thinking, like, in this crazy time, God knows our needs. And it's like, I just been like battling. This has probably been the most emotionally complex year of my life, if I'm being honest with you. Battling inside of me, just like days, moments of hope, anger, frustration, depressing feelings, and then moments of joy taking full and trying to take full advantage of them. And one of the biggest things that I have been fighting was just general disappointment. Because, like, I had goals for this year. This was supposed to be the year that I took the next step forward in life, in my growth as a man. And yet, all of that, everything going on right now, all that blew up in my face. Especially because the whole limitations of, and yeah, I've definitely hung out with people. Try to take as much precaution as possible, but I've definitely been around people and I've had joyful moments with them. And I don't regret any of them. But just that actively seeking an avenue to just all the passions that are inside of me, trying to seek an avenue to use them, and just the limited movement that impedes upon that. And then, like, news of a mutation as soon as a vaccine starts becoming available. Kind of sometimes has made me, more often than not, feel stuck in neutral this year. Just focusing on, like, my own goals, but then I read stuff like, then I read this, and these words come to life, and I'm not a we're not fatalists. Christians are not fatalists. It's like, what we do on this earth definitely matters. But then you read stuff like this, and it just, so many things seem so, like, insignificant in comparison. Maybe it's just a combination of frustrations, one thing happening after another repeatedly, and searching for my calling in the midst of this. Back to the concluding parts of the lesson. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been outwitted by the wise men, he flew into a rage. He gave orders to massacre all the male children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, in keeping with the time he had learned from the wise men. Then what was spoken through Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be consoled because there were no more. So apparently historians recorded that Herod, he wanted Jewish leaders in Jerusalem killed on the day that he died because he knew that nobody was going to mourn for him. And he was determined that some tears would be shed on the day that he died. This is totally in line with the kind of character that Herod was. And it just goes to show, like, we think we're more civilized now. We think we've gotten better, but history throughout time, there's been plenty of generations that have treated children like total crap, who had no regard or respect for them. Like, even today, even though it's not to this extreme, well, it is, but we're not going to get into abortion right now. Just like in schools, some schools, you don't even have to be in a fight. You can just be within the vicinity of a fight and you get punished. Or if you try to break up a fight, you get punished just for being involved. It's just like a sentiment that carries over of you're going to be punished just for making my day more inconvenient. And that carries over, I think, into workplace mindsets too. Like, I am going to do all of this right now just so that you can get off of my back. But yeah, don't be surprised. There have been plenty of cultures and generations that have not given a crap about their children. And yet Jesus took a child and said that your faith must be like that of this little child. He used this little child as an example of what the highest in the kingdom of heaven would look like. He said the kingdom of heaven is full of people who are with that spirit. Finally, after Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, because those who sought the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and entered the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Imagine that, the one child that Herod kept alive. What was his personality like? He was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the region of Galilee. Then he went and settled in a town called Nazareth to fulfill what was being spoken through the prophets, that he will be called a Nazarene. And Galilee at that time had a higher Gentile population than Judea. And Joseph may have been thinking, hey, we should go to Jerusalem. What better city for the Messiah to be raised in? But obviously that didn't happen. And Gentile means non-Jew for anyone who doesn't know. And Galilee had a higher Gentile population than Judea. And not a bad starting place for the future savior of sinners and pagans. But then you contrast the wise men to the shepherds. The shepherds got to see Jesus first. And the shepherds, just based on their job, they were considered dirty and unclean to enter the temple. These were the guys who were taking care of the sheep that were used for the temple sacrifices. Yet they weren't even allowed to go in the temple and worship. And yet these who were considered unclean, they are the first to see the one who would make them clean. And then the wise men from the east came. Jesus came to the Jew first, then the Gentile. He came to the humble and the ignorant first, the shepherds, then the wise and the learned, these wise men and astrologers. First he came to the poor, then he came to the rich. And I'm going through this tonight because, like, we got the star going on. Just basically trying to, like, also remind myself of light that he provides in this dark time, because I know I can tend to focus just more on the current situation around me, and I'm currently in a place where I'm not being constantly bombarded by just everything, so it's given me more time to dwell and think about this stuff. I just feel sometimes just feel disappointment and temptations to resentment because of everything I went through this year. But then I look at this, and that just seems so insignificant, and it just seems so insignificant. I want to find my He's amazing.